It's the March 2025 show with Dave and Randy. It's a boomer music experience. Randy and I always have some fun with this. And you got me off guard when you said we're going to do the 1980s because that's
Uh-huh.
in my wheelhouse, and I was all excited. And then I
Uh-huh.
sat down and started sort of putting stuff together, listening to the music, figuring it all out, and I went, "Oh my goodness, there's way too much here." Like you hit me with a snowstorm, buddy. You hit me with a blizzard, and I wasn't ready for it. And I was like, then I just went down this rabbit hole yesterday, a matter of fact, and started playing all these 80 tunes. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, we should talk about this. Oh, we should talk." Oh, and I just gave up. And I said, Randy and I are going to have to do a few shows on this because the one thing I appreciated about the 1980s that I didn't
Mhm.
really, I guess, while I was growing up in it, I didn't realize was the diversity of the music.
Yes,
Right? I mean,
absolutely, Dave.
you must have seen it firsthand, buddy. Like I was living
Oh, yeah.
it. You had already come through and seen what was happening, and
Yep.
just the different types of music. I gotta, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not appreciating the moment I was in at that time now. But
Mhm.
let's talk 1980s music, Randy. I'm excited.
Sounds great, Dave. And thank you very much once again for having me. I've got a lot to cover here. And yeah, there's so much music from the decade of the 1980s. It's like a blizzard. It's uh, it's like a blizzard at minus 24 wind chill.
How can you go from Van Halen to Cyndi Lauper, right? How can you
Yeah,
go from
exactly.
like Naked
Yep.
Eyes to, to hair metal? Like it's just
Oh,
crazy,
yeah.
but it was so much fun that era of music.
Yep. And too, Dave, these songs are still being continuously played on all of the FM radio stations right across Canada. And of note, locally, especially our two radio stations, 98.9 FM and Oldies 99.7 FM. And as they're played on various radio stations, uh, they have the music of the 80s had like a virtuistic quality, and it made them timeless in the works of the art from each of the artists. So each of these popular 80s bands and artists really excelled in a genre of music many times over that we've never experienced before. Something totally different from the music of the 50s and 60s and 70s and currently. And I'd just like to, Dave, share with our audience. I'm going to just highlight a few of the top 50 songs of the decade of the 1980s. And then I've got some other information about songs and music from the 1980s. And I'll finish up the broadcast with my top 10 favorite songs of the 1980s in the order that I picked them. Now, I may
Perfect.
get some disagreement on that,
Well,
but
I might have to, yeah, I might have to throw a few bones at you on that one. But
l-
let's go. Let's go. Let's have some fun with
okay.
this.
Okay. Um, First of all, the top song of the decade of the 1980s goes to Prince, Purple Rain, the year 1984. And this song, Dave, it's almost 9 minutes long. Like, that's unheard of for a
Yeah.
rock song. But hey, wait a minute. But wait a minute. We go back to the year 1968 and the late Sir Richard Harris, who sung MacArthur Park. That song was 7 minutes and 20 seconds. So, here's a song a little longer, but hey, it works. Number two, none other than Michael Jackson and Thriller from 1982, as he does now his infamous dance step to this song. What a dancer Michael was, in addition to being a great artist for music. Number three checks in Toto, 1982. This is a great little song. It's got some nice upbeat hits to it. Africa, one of my favorites.
Me too.
Number four, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Oh, yeah. Tell us about that. Anyway, Tears for Fears, the year 1985. Careless Whisper, Wham. The year was 1984. That was number six. Under Pressure with Queen and David Bowie.
Great
Good
song.
song. They play this a lot on Oldies 99.7. The year that came out, 1982. And Take on Me, Aha. Yeah, that was the name of the group, Aha, from 1985. This was a one-hit wonder, but boy, did they ever nail it.
Yeah.
Quadruple platinum, Dave. The year, 1985. And you'll note, too, especially in this song, this was really the beginning of using these synthesizers, which was really a defining feature of the music in the 1980s. And you can hear it quite a bit on this song, Take on Me. And we have Madonna, Like a Virgin, 1984, checks in at number 9. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, 1986, another good song. And one of my favorites, number 11. And there's no dance that I have ever DJ'd that this song has not been requested. Don't Stop Believin', Journey, 1983. You got it.
Ain't that the truth, right?
Yep. Sweet Child O' Mine, Guns N' Roses from 1987. Whitney Houston, of course, the late Whitney Houston, she gave us so much great, great music. I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston from 1987. This morning at 7:30, coming back from the Royal Canadian Legion in Port Dover, let's see, it was 98.9 FM played Whitney Houston's How Will I Know? Another great song by Whitney Houston, circa 1985. But, and we move on. Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Cyndi Lauper checks in at 60, and I would put it much higher than that. The year for that, 1983. And this song, Dave, I want to share with our audience. This appears on a lot of the CDs entitled Girls Night Out. There's a lot of CDs now. It's a compilation of songs, and this goes right to the top of that list. Girls Just Want to Have Fun. If you get a chance to listen to that CD, please do. It's really got the best of the best for the women who attend the dances, the weddings, and they just crank it when I play that song by Cyndi
you
Lauper.
And I had an opportunity a few months back we did one of our shows on Cyndi Lauper, and
right on.
And I think out of that, my appreciation grew much more for her and what she was able to accomplish and still is doing to this day.
Certainly, absolutely. Number 19 checks in, Tom Petty, his biggest single release, not with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, but Tom Petty alone, Free Fallin' from 1989. Great song from Tom Petty. Great song. We'll always remember Tom Petty. He had a remarkable career.
I believe, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I believe on that album, the last song was Zombie Zoo, Dancing at the Zombie Zoo. Do you have any requests for that? I'm just curious because I always liked that song and I thought it was kind of a neat.
Great. It is a great song, Dave. And I do get requests for that song. Not as much as Free Fallin', but I still get requests for it. And it's a good dance number, And that way we're not dancing in the dark.
Here we go.
Which leads into my next song, number 20 on the list, Bruce Springsteen from 1984. I would rate it much higher than the top 20 of the decade.
I'm surprised Born in the USA wasn't in the top 10, to be honest with you.
Yes, another good song by Bruce Springsteen, The Boss. Yeah. In the Air Tonight, good old Phil Collins.
That should be higher too.
It should be. It ranks 22nd.
You still hear that song everywhere today. Like people, and it's being almost rediscovered. You know what I mean? Like just that drum. Well, obviously, was it Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football used it.
Yeah, that's right.
Here tonight and this year, and it's just like reborn, right? So there you go.
It is, and a great song by Phil Collins amongst many. 1981, another one that just comes to the top of my head, Susu Studio by Phil Collins, another great one. Okay, Simple Minds, 1985. Don't You Forget About Me. Good song, good song, and of course, the immortal, the late Tina Turner. What's Love Got to Do with It?
That's got to be higher.
Oh,
I mean, I'm interested to hear your list now because I'm like, wait a minute, Tina Turner's top 10. I don't even want to. I don't know who made this list, Randy, but I'm not happy with it.
Yeah, same here. Same here, Dave. Yeah,
And
I don't know.
we're just the messenger, folks. We'll
Yep,
get to
that's
ours.
right. Yeah. And I don't believe, honestly, in my heart, Dave, I don't believe, honestly, this was put out by Billboard because they would be more attentive to detail as to the ranking of many of these songs,
But
which this is.
maybe it's us too, though, because our fond appreciation for artists that survived the 60s and 70s and then made it big in the 80s. Maybe it's me and you
Uh-huh.
because, right, we sort of see, we know where Springsteen came from and he started. We know what Tina Turner went through, right? So
That's right.
maybe it's just because we do these shows, we have a different feel for it. We look at music a little differently, obviously. Maybe we're honoring the legends more
Very
so
true.
than maybe the newer stuff that was coming out in the 80s at the time.
Very true. Yeah. This next girl, I got a chance to meet her while I was working at Toronto International Airport. Bonnie Tyler, The Total Eclipse of the Heart, the year 1983. Bonnie has kind of a gravelly voice,
Yeah.
but boy, did she knock this one out of the ballpark. Total Eclipse of the Heart. And I'm just coming off 4 Valentine's dances. That's right, 4 Valentine's dances, folks. And this one was requested at each of those Valentine's dances. Total Eclipse of the Heart. And it really has romantic interludes in the song. It's a great song.
Isn't that the one Rory did with her?
Yes, absolutely.
Rory died, local guy, and he sang back up and just and there's one little thing that we gotta see if sometime he'll just come on and do one with us, because I know at one time in the 80s, I believe he sang back up for Billy Joel, Air Supply, and Bonnie Tyler, and all 3 of those songs I think on Billboard were 1, 2, 3 at one point.
Right on.
And that's incredible when you start thinking about a guy from our neck of the woods being able to be part of that. You know what I mean? Isn't that cool?
Oh, it is. And good to have local in there. And I think a lot of our local talent here in Norfolk County, Dave, the artists do not receive the recognition that they so deserve. Yeah. Like working with bands worldwide known and working on their own merit also.
Well, you start thinking about the band, right?
Yep.
Rick Danko from our area. There's just so many guys and women that were incredible that we don't really. You're exactly right. We don't acknowledge enough. We don't understand or appreciate the music that's been created within this within our borders.
Yep. Number 32 checks in with the Eurythmics, 1983. Sweet Dreams, another good song.
Annie Lennox, what a voice!
And this next song I've chosen to announce, Gail Catherwood, if you're listening to this broadcast, Chase the Ace every Friday night at the Royal Canadian Legion in Port Dover. Ace of Spades, that's what they're after. Yes. Ace of Spades, a great song by Motorhead. Yes, I just had to put that in, Dave. I'm sure Gail will listen to this broadcast.
I love that you put Motorhead in there. I love it.
Exactly. Oh, Lordy. Down Under, Men at Work from 1981. Another great song, Men at Work. Tainted Love, Got a Good Beat by Soft Cell from 1981.
Hey, quick question for you. I hate to interrupt while you're on roll, but with those top, I mean, you're at mid-30s. Is there any sense, did all that music have a certain, I know we've talked about this in the past, is there a certain rhythm or beat to it that a lot of these made them successful that you picked up on?
I think a lot of them there, Dave, have really, they've listened closely to a lot of the bands in the 50s and 60s, 70s, and they've incorporated some genre, which is maybe a double, triple genre, into their songs that they have sung. But it goes back to, even the days of the Beatles. And even to this day, like even Paul McCartney's still writing music for these artists and these bands. I mean, how good is that?
Yeah. Okay.
And Ringo Starr now, he'll be putting out his next album, and Ringo is now doing country music.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That is phenomenal. So I'm just waiting to get the CD when that comes out, and I'll definitely purchase it. I want to go through all the songs on that CD. Billy Joel, Uptown Girl.
Yeah.
Number 42? I don't think so. The year 1983. That's a great song.
Yeah.
Everybody gets up on the dance floor when Billy Joel, Uptown Girl.
It's got that 50-60 vibe, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It has a crossover between, I'm thinking, well, the Beatles certainly, but also Bobby Rydell.
Ricky Valance, like it reminds me of that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the other thing too that we haven't even touched on, but I'm going to mention it right now because a lot of these bands that were unknown, that was MTV, right? All of a sudden it exploded.
Oh,
and
major, big time.
Some of these, the diversity of the music that was coming out at that time, a lot of these different, the new wave, all this stuff got played, and suddenly they were in your face, right? You suddenly saw the band.
That's right.
So it changed the whole dynamic for the 80s, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Rick Astley from 1987, Never Gonna Give You Up.
I thought that would have been higher.
Yeah, I thought that'd be at least be
you
in the top.
You probably get requests for that still, don't you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And on all 4 Valentine's dances I've just come off of, yes, that song was requested at each of the Valentine's dances. Good lyrics on that, good beat, good
strong
dance
vocals.
tune. Yeah. And let's go to the bottom of the pack. I disagree with this one too. Number 50, Let's Groove, Earth, Wind, and Fire from 1981. That's a great song. And this song, Dave, although 1981, it has strong elements of the disco song, the disco genre in it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do. And that shows the strength of Earth, Wind, and Fire because I think they started in the late 60s, did they not?
Yes, absolutely.
So it just shows that they're still going strong in the early 80s, and that's kudos to them. And that sound they had was their sound.
Oh, definitely. And there's been no band to come along in the many, many years to duplicate their sound and their structure of music. Again, slanted heavily with the disco beat.
Yeah. I got to ask, they're not, I know your favorite band. I haven't heard you mention it yet. Are they in there?
No, they're not.
What? Are you kidding me? No, they got to be.
I don't believe they're not in here.
Well, you might as well just take that clipboard and throw it to the side.
I think so. Yeah. Chicago.
Yes.
Peter Cetera in Chicago.
They're like Earth, Wind, and Fire. They had their own distinct sound. That horn section's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
And I know they were big in the 70s, but I know they had hits in the 80s. They would have been, I would have thought a top 50 easily.
Absolutely. And then too, Peter Cetera had a very successul solo career too, and he teamed up with a lot of different female artists to do duets. Like he was magnificent. That's the favorite group of all time for me, Chicago. And Peter Cetera's got to be right up there with one of my favorite song artists as a solo performer.
Ooh, there you go. You knew them when they were the Chicago Transit Authority. That's you go. Right. That's how far back they go.
That's right. Yeah. And in fact, they go back as far as 1969. And
they're still playing today. They're still going. That's what I love to see. They sure are. Yeah. They sound great. I think I saw them recently on a talk show. And that's I think they've got a few more singers involved now, but I mean, they sounded excellent. They still got it.
Just like Chicago of old.
Yeah.
And their first big hit on the Billboard Top 100 was 1969, If You Leave Me Now. And
Great song. Great song.
That song even today is still with it. With dances, you name it. I still get requests for that. I really do.
Isn't it amazing the way that type of song that could be released today and be a hit? You know what I mean?
Oh, like no question.
That's how the strength of music is. Like it doesn't pick an era. It's the lyrics fit no matter where you go, what time. That song would work today. In my opinion, that song would work today.
Absolutely correct, Dave. I agree 1,000%. And the music of the 80s with the synthesizers coming in and this and that. Many of these songs, as I mentioned earlier in our broadcast, still are played religiously on all of the FM radio stations throughout Canada.
Do you think the synthesizer replaced the saxophone?
Definitely. Right
And that,
on, Dave. You nailed it.
because I feel like I mean, a lot of the late 70s stuff, 70s, early 80s, the saxophone was integral in a lot of the bands. You know, Clarence Clemens, right? You just got to think of
Yep.
the boss, and
Right on.
Clarence Clemens, and then it's right there. But it kind of just disappeared. Then all you heard was a synthesizer there
Yes.
for a while.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So, Dave, you ready for this? I've put together my favorite top 10 of the decade of the 1980s, and I want to start with number 10 and work right up to number 1.
Okay. I'm cool with this. Yeah.
Now, you may agree, you may disagree, but here goes.
But this is the great part about what we do. It's you get to pick.
Yeah. Number 10, Let's Groove, Earth, Wind, and Fire from 1981.
I agree. Good call.
Number 9, Africa by Toto, 1982.
I may have moved them up on mine to number 3 or 4, to be honest with you.
Okay. Number 8 checks in with Tina Turner, 1984. What's Love Got to Do with It?
Man, that's a tough one too, because the worst part is I want to put everything in the top 5.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, same
you know
here,
what I mean?
Dave. It's tough. It's hard. Number 7, lucky number 7, Total Eclipse of the Heart, Bonnie Tyler,
Yeah.
1983. Number 6, Billy Joel, Uptown Girl, 1983. Thriller, Michael Jackson, number 5. Now we're in the top 5.
Yeah.
Number 4, Don't Stop Believin',
Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah.
Top 3 now, folks. Number 3, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Cyndi Lauper from 1983.
See, I don't know, because you were a single guy back then, right? So
Yes.
I think that's the only reason you like that.
Yeah, I was footloose and fancy free.
Footloose. Speaking
well,
of
footloose. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kenny Loggins.
Yeah,
Here we
I
go.
know. He's got to. Where was he on that list, right?
Yeah, good question, Dave. He should have been on this list. Kenny Loggins, Footloose, like
All the stuff he released in the 80s.
oh yeah. And this artist, number 2, I had mentioned earlier. We heard one of her songs this morning at 7:30, coming back from the Legion in Port Dover. 1980. That song came out in 1983. It was a great song, also. The artist, Whitney Houston. I Want to Dance with Somebody.
Okay.
Number 2. And Whitney, she had a tremendously successful career, but her career got started at her hometown in her church. She was started as a gospel singer. And a lot of people are not aware of that, Dave. And from that, she worked darn hard, and she honed her skills, and she was phenomenal. I still get many, many, many requests for Whitney Houston.
Just an incredible voice.
Yep. Number 1,
Drum roll, please.
Bruce Springsteen from 1984, Dancing in the Dark, The Boss.
Now, did you base this on your choices or what you see that folks ask you to play? Curious.
Yes, this is a kind of a dual combination. Dave, good point, good question. And I want to share this with our audience. It's this top 10 list that I've kind of derived the decade of the 80s. It's based on some of the songs that I truly like for that decade, but it's also based on specific songs that I've taken requests at the many dances that I DJ at, and be it a fundraiser, be it a wedding, be it a seniors dance, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a dual combination of both of those factors coming forth for me to draw up a top 10 of the decade of the 1980s.
That's pretty cool. Like, I mean, I can't argue. I can't fault any of your top 10, to be honest with you. I probably would have threw in a Van Halen jump. I probably would have threw in Dexy's Midnight Riders. I
Hmm.
probably would have threw in Naked Eyes, always
Yep.
something there to remind me, an old Burt Bacharach song.
Right
But I
on.
mean, you're pretty much spot on. And U2 came out in the '80s, and I think that's a band that should probably be somewhere on
Oh,
those lists because
definitely should
I
be.
still haven't found what I'm looking for. You know, I think maybe the Joshua Tree was in the '90s. I'm not positive on that, but I know they were out
Mhm.
in the '80s because I was listening to them. So I think
Oh,
they were
yes.
kind of a turning point musically too, because suddenly everything got serious again, right? Like
That's
music
right.
started to take on that persona of meaning something politically.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, there was I
So
think that
true.
the '80s had such a diverse, like, I was looking at this when you talk about, like you said, there's rock, R&B, hip hop, new wave, hair metal,
Oh,
uh,
yes.
pop, like there was just everything electronic, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I think that diversity probably helped form more of my musical opinions or background, because then I wanted to
Hmm.
look deeper. Like, well,
Hmm.
where did this genre come from? Why is this, where did this start? And you kept
Yeah.
seeing all these different turning points in the '80s with music, right? Like you said about the synthesizer, it changed the game. It
Oh,
made new wave sort of, I think it made new wave sort of jump up a level. You know what I mean?
well,
And
exactly.
we didn't even talk about hip hop, which was starting out back then too, which is another genre. I definitely think we got to do a second show. And
Oh,
you
for
know what the
sure.
other part was? You know who else wasn't on that list? Brian Adams, 1983, Cuts
Yeah,
Like a Knife.
that's right.
Celine
Canadian
Dion was
Brian
starting in
Adams.
the '80s. Like there was
Yeah.
Tom Cochrane, Red Rider. Like there was some. I think maybe we'll do an '80s on Canadian music. Corey Hart,
Corey
right?
Hart. Another good one. Corey
Yeah.
Hart.
So
And he had many, many good hits also.
I think it's kind of one of those eras that we're probably not really. I don't think we're appreciating it yet. Maybe it's not far enough removed. I guess it's 35 years, 40 years
Hmm.
out, but
Hmm.
maybe in time people will see that music for what it is and how it
Exactly.
changed the course.
Yeah.
Again,
And just a case in point there, you had mentioned U2. They were on the top 50 list here, 1980s, decade of the 80s. Yeah, with or without you, U2, 1987.
isn't that crazy? Think about
Yep.
that. 1987 already. That they've been
Yeah,
around. They've been around 40 years,
that's
right?
right. Boy, that's hard to
Easily.
believe.
I know. We're,
Oh,
as Dave and Randy age ourselves quickly in front of the TV, in front of the screens here.
yeah.
Yeah. And Michael Jackson, like you said, was one of those movers and shakers. And Prince changed music again. Like he was, when Little Red Corvette came out, nobody really
Yeah,
knew who he was and what was this song, right?
that's right.
And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it just exploded. And that changed everything. And we'd be remiss not to mention McCartney had hits in the '80s. George
Yeah.
Harrison, you
Right
know what I mean?
on.
John Lennon, 1980.
Yeah.
Uh, the Beatles, like you said, I'm sure there was something for all of them there, but they were still going strong as individual artists, and I think we
Oh,
kind of forget that too.
absolutely. Absolutely, Dave. And speaking of Prince, Little Red Corvette, um, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the um, anthem of the Corvettes, the Corvette Club.
Oh, is it?
That's Little Red Corvette by Prince. And at any of the car shows that I'm doing, that's always requested.
Why
Even
do
if
you?
they're just even if it's a Corvette show or just a general car show or even truck show, that gets requested. Little Red Corvette by Prince.
We mentioned MTV and how it changed things again.
Hmm.
What do you think? What was, as a DJ? I know you were doing a little bit back then, but I mean, what was the one thing you took away from the '80s? Was there anything that stands out to you? I mean, obviously the music and the diversity, but was there anything, one point, like you were talking about Whitney Houston and what she brought to the
Hmm.
game?
Hmm.
Was there certain musicians like that you sort of look back now and go, "Dang, I wish they had longer. I wish we had more of their music."
Yes, absolutely, Dave. Whitney Houston, right up at the top of the list there, of course, and Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Um, I can go on and on.
I mean, I
Queen,
wish.
David Bowie.
I think Lennon too. One more album, two more albums, three more albums were there for him. You know what I mean? If
Oh,
he didn't pass, because
definitely.
his music was still resonating with culture. You know what I
Yep.
mean? He was still making that impact. I think, you never know, right? Because that's
right.
kind of, we didn't even talk about Eric Clapton. We didn't
No,
even
and Eric
talk about,
Clapton, another good, like,
I know, and some of the revival bands that came back in the 80s from the 60s and 70s, like the
mhm.
Beach Boys, Kokomo, right?
Yeah,
Was it
Kokomo.
on there? Was
Yep.
Kokomo on there?
No, not at all.
I think you and I would
that's,
probably look at that because
oh, yeah.
understanding the background of the Beach Boys and having a hit. I
Yeah.
mean, what year did they start? 62, 63?
Right on, 1962. Yep.
Right. So, and
Surfer
here they
Girl.
are 20 years later, still hitting it with Kokomo.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's subject. That's a great thing about it, folks. When you do a list, everybody has their own interpretation and their own feel for their music. I like
Right
using
on.
Randy as a sounding board because as a DJ, he gets to see what people are thinking constantly. So, when we do our shows, it's kind of fun because then I can pick your brain to see what society's looking at. Has it changed? Is it, what's the feel for music? I think it goes without saying that music can change when society changes. Like if it's a darker era, the music might be a little darker, or
That's
you
right,
kind of look
Dave.
at those things that add to that level of intensity within the music.
Certainly. So true. And I have to reiterate again, Dave, for our audience, that these songs in the decade of the 1980s are still continuously being played on many of the FM radio stations, and they're hailed for their virtuistic qualities, ultimately making them timeless works of art from each of these popular 80 bands and artists. And that really says it all.
And you look at some of today's talent and they go back and, they'll rework some of those early classics and play them again. And you're like, oh, that's a different way of playing that. I never would have thought of like it. And I think I go back to, and I can't remember, I'm going to apologize up front. I don't remember the artist's name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but they redid Tracy Chapman. Redid Tracy Chapman's hit. I think they played it on the Country Music Awards, right?
Yep,
and it shot up to number one. What's that? 40 years after it was released, that came out in the 1980s.
Yep.
Right, Fast Car. And
Fast Car. Yep.
Yeah, it's was that Chris Stapleton? I can't remember.
Luke Combs.
Luke Combs.
Yeah.
You're right.
Luke Combs. Yeah.
But it's just kind of one of those things that you're just like, what the heck, right? It sounded unbelievable, and just showing his appreciation to her music, I thought was something phenomenal to watch.
Yeah.
So it all comes back.
It certainly does. Speaking of that, I got that CD a couple of months ago, Dave. Luke Combs. It's a great CD, and Fast Car is certainly on that. And boy,
he does a great job.
He certainly does. He just nailed it. It's good. But the decade of the 80s, a lot of great music was produced and made in that decade. Totally different from the 50s, 60s, but equally enjoyable to listen to and to dance to.
So what do you think next month? You want to do 80s music, but Canadian bands? I mean, we got Honeymoon Suite, we got Rush, we got Tom Cochrane, we got
you got it.
That Canadian influence that has to come through, right? So let's talk about that next month. The Canadian version, eh?
Hey, sounds good. Absolutely, Dave. I agree with you and looking forward to that podcast. I'll do my research thoroughly again on that. And this is good because, with our research on these songs and the different decades and this and that, it gives our audience a depth of interest in music that probably they've never experienced before. Just a thought.
Yeah. And I think I like that, with our, you've educated me on a lot of musicians that I didn't know about. And I'd like to think that, I've sort of said to you, hey, what about this over here? And we take a look at different things. And that's why our show works. So I got to say, hey, kudos to you, Randy, for the great work that you do every month on this show. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dave. And I truly and honestly enjoy working with you. It's fantastic. It's a great podcast. And folks, every month we do our podcast. Tune in and become learned.
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. Take care. Talk to you next month.
Will do, Dave. Thanks very much. Have a good week.